It would make it a little bit harder because you don't know how to act because you don't have anybody to act opposite of. So it probably made it much more difficult for you to try to figure out how should I voice this, how should I play this kind of.
Well, but there were the Andrea that was the casting lady on it and stuff she really knew very much what they wanted, and they would talk you through these different takes, a little stronger, a little this, a little that. So, yeah, they knew what they were doing and how it would fit in, and, you just had to, okay, I can do that. I'll go that way. I can do that. Okay. Let's do it again. I mean, it was never, they did it fast. It wasn't, tedious, but it was fun.
Okay. Very, very cool. And speaking of it, you also did this movie called The Chair?
Yeah, I just did that with Susan and I both did little cameos in it.
Okay.
I think it's going to look good. I think they got a lot of great people in it, and that they certainly knew what they were doing, and they knew what they wanted, and we certainly had fun that day shooting it. I was some prison warden, and Susan played some secretary, so it was a good day.
Okay, very, very cool. Hopefully we'll get to see that eventually. And what do you got coming up with you? Are you still off there traveling? Every time I see you on Twitter, you got the pictures up somewhere. You're always somewhere in a Hawaiian shirt.
Well, yes, I keep my I try and keep my Twitter profile like James Bond. He's always with. I try and either be with hot women or in some tropical setting or on a Vespa or on a boat or somewhere.
Hey, why not?
Well, I'm out. I'm on the move. So I'm the man of mystery.
While Ken's away, Jackie had this to say. Next up, Jackie Zeman stops by. She plays Bobbie Spencer on General Hospital as well. And we talked about the many loves and lives of Barbara Jean Spencer, and also the anniversary show that's centered around Luke Spencer and what happened with the death of his mother, as well as the final days of Luke in Port Charles. Here it is, Jackie Zeman. Check it out. But I'm so glad we were able to do this today. I mean, it's we've done this several times already, and it's so much fun to always talk to you. And we talked with Ken last Wednesday actually, and that was a hoot. He is one of my favorite people to ever speak with. Oh my goodness!
I know he's hysterical,
wonderful.
Isn't he? He's very funny. He's got a great sense of humor.
He does. He's a great person. We were able to talk about a lot of stuff, Scotty Baldwin wise, and
and Ken has a way of telling a story that's different than everybody else. Don't you agree?
I do. I got my first experience with that, because this was the first time I've ever talked to him. So just listening to it, I was like, wow, he goes about it in such a way that I've never heard before. So that's why it was so fun for me, because I was just so enamored by the way he was speaking.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yep.
I love him. We've been friends, my God, since we're 24 years old. That's how long we've been friends. So, and he's a dear friend. I feel like he's a member of my family friend that close. So I love him. I adore him.
You both started on this show the same year, I think.
Yeah.
In 1977. You came in December of that year, and it's just amazing how Bobbie changed throughout the course of those years when you first came on the scene. I mean, you were just a vixen that people apparently wanted to throw tomatoes at because the way
you remember that.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's so funny because I had asked Ken to send me a picture, and it was of you two from that era, and I'm just like looking at it, and I was like watching clips from that era of Bobbie's, I wouldn't say maniacal ways, I would just say her vixen ways. I guess that's maybe the better word for it. And it was just so funny just to see mainly her bringing Luke Spencer to town. I mean, I feel that came full circle. She brought him to town in a sense, and then he leaves town a few months ago, and just trying to break up Scotty and Laura. And it was just It was fun. It was fun to watch all of that. I mean, I never really got to watch it in full until episodes on YouTube came out, and it was just interesting to see that backstory.
Yeah, thank you. Well, yeah, you have a good memory to go back and remember all that. It was fun, and it's still fun, you know? It's amazing over the years that the show is still on, that we're still on, and still standing with all the craziness that's gone on, and that our little pod, you know, like Kim, Jeannie, me, well, Tony's gone now, but for Tony a long time. You know, we had our little group, Christina, Lynn Herring, you know what I mean? We had our little group of people, and, you know, we've survived the ups and the downs and the changes and the, you know, all the different writing teams that have come in and the different producers that have come in. And I think that to the audience, you know, the people that watch, I think they really love that because we're truly their family. You know, I mean, I love soap operas, so I started watching when I was a little girl with my grandma and my mother, you know what I mean? So I know what it's like. So, you know, before I was on a show, I loved the shows. I got on the shows because I loved the shows. That's why I wanted to be in a soap opera. But I know that feeling of when you just turn on a show because you feel emotionally invested and emotionally attached to my show, my story, my people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you started on One Life to Live before coming over to General Hospital too, if I remember correctly.
That was my first full-time contract role. I worked my very, very, very first, like, ever on a soap opera was Edge of Night, but only for like a day or two. And I played, ironically, an airline stewardess, and I think my name was Bobbie. Yeah, I swear to God, I think it was. It was so long ago, but I played it on Tony Craig used to be on, and Dixie Carter, you know.
Yes.
So it was, so, you know, I was with them, I worked with them, and I played an airline stewardess. It was just like a day player, 2 days. That was my first, you know, foray into soap opera land, and I went, whoa, this is really fun. I like this.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say that going into soaps, because, you know, with soap operas, I always commend the actors and actresses in this business because, you know, you're going to work with new scripts 5 days a week, and you're reading about 70 to 80 pages a day, and I think that's one of the most strenuous, if not hard-working jobs that an actor can have, and just watching them, you know, basically play out the pages onto the screen is a huge feat. I know I couldn't do it. So for me, I just sit here and I just basically have a lot of respect for those that can do it. So.
Oh, thank you. Well, you know, it's fun. It's like anything else. So you probably could do it if you were doing it every day. I think it's, you know, like short-term memory, it's like a muscle like anything else. Like, yes, you do have to obviously memorize the lines and remember the lines. And so you go through your entire career having homework every night. You know what I mean? Which, like, people get out of school and they go, yay, no more homework, until they get that first job and then realize this, like, with a lot of jobs, you do have homework. You either got to pitch in a meeting or you got to write up, you know, some jobs have a lot of writing. In today's day and age, everything's email. I mean, people don't want to pick up the phone anymore. You spend your life writing. You know what I mean? So it's very true. Like, whatever the thing is that you do, you just, as you repeat and do it, I think anything in life, you gain self-confidence from something that you feel that you do well, you know? And that's how, I mean, that creates for a great career, but also a very happy life in your career of feeling like a great sense of satisfaction and a passion for it and joy. And particularly in acting, I mean, you know, when I started out, we all did it for free. We didn't get paid. We were in plays and we were in, you know, stuff and take acting classes and doing community theater, and you didn't do it for the money, you did it for the love of it.
The love of it,
So how amazing to get to be, you know, on a TV show all these years and be able to do something that we all love so much and earn a living, you know, not have to, like, at the end of the day, go home and get a job someplace else to be able to pay the bills. So, I feel very much gratitude for that and very blessed and very grateful for it.
I mean, you came on the show when it was doing a complete change, when Gloria Monty came in, and it was so different than any other soap that was on the air at the time, especially into the early 80s when it was just flat out adventure. There was so much scenic scenes. I know that's redundant in my phrasing, but it's true. You know, you got to go on location shoots, and it was just absolute. I enjoyed the early '80s at General Hospital. I mean, and that was my first recollection of watching it when I was younger. I got to see all of that stuff, and I loved how they were doing those adventure scenes. You know, with Luke and Robert Scorpio and Scotty and Frisco and Felicia. It was just huge for that show, and I loved every minute of it. I loved that era of that show. I think that was probably one of my favorites.
I agree. It was fun. Well, and also it was all new. It was a new way of telling stories on soap operas, and maybe that's one of the reasons why you liked it and the audience liked it and we all loved it so much, is because it was unpredictable, because it hadn't been done before. And the storylines always, for the years prior to that time that you're talking about now, were, about women, by women, for women. It was all centered around women. The men were just like the supporting characters. Every woman on the soaps was married or had a boyfriend or a lover, but it was basically told the story from the woman's perspective, the woman's point of view. And then all of a sudden Gloria Monty came in and said, no, we're going to bring in some really strong male lead characters that are going to be just as strong as the women, and it's going to be a story about life where it was both perspectives. And she was able to do that not only professionally, as Gloria was, to be a television producer in those days, it was mostly men. It was hard to even get that job as a woman. It was hard to get in a room and be taken seriously as a woman. And I remember, because I was young, I was pre-med in college, and I remember, oh my God, that was when women were just starting to get accepted into medical school. That you could apply, and you wouldn't necessarily get in because you were a woman, but you didn't get penalized because you were a woman. You know what I mean? It was kind of equal. But that was the first time that ever happened in this country. So, we've come a long way. And I think that's one of the reasons why people love the soap so much. And then when she came up with the sexual equality, the business, there were like as many women doctors on General Hospital as male doctors. She did the rape storyline with, Luke and Laura, and she did the sexual storylines where it was, Bobbie pursuing Scotty and vice versa, as instead of Scotty pursuing Bobbie. You know what I mean? She switched everything all around and made it all interesting the way it is in real life. And people said, oh, what's going on over there? It's like what's going on with my family, or it's like what's going on at my school or with my friends. And I think that's how we got some of our audience who still watches us today, because they grew up with us. And
they still talk about stuff that has happened on that show from years ago. I mean, it's interesting to hear people and see people on social media or at events and whatnot, and just talk about their favorite times on the show and what they've learned from the show. And I think a lot of my favorite moments from the show were in not just the mid '80s, but also the early '90s. And obviously the one that sticks out in mind was the BJ story. And that literally was my first storyline, or first several episodes of the show that I remember watching when I started watching it on a consistent basis. And it was very intense for me as a young kid to watch that, because it was one of those things where I'm sitting there going like, I know what's going on, but not really knowing what's going on. And then once I really got into it, as well as the Monica's cancer story, then I really was so invested as a young kid. I was just so enamored about what was happening in the Quartermain household. And I just knew that there was an issue that was plaguing Bobbie and Tony, but not realizing what that issue was. But I knew that there was something going on, and I felt for Bobbie, I felt for Tony, I felt for the Quartermain kind of thing, and it was just so raw, and it was so real, and I think that's really one of the reasons why that kind of stuff sticks with me, because I was invested. And as you just said earlier, people do watch this stuff because they have a connection to it. This is something that they see day in and day out, and they feel for these characters because they were written in such a way where you could not couldn't not feel for them. So it was intense, but it was a good intense.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. I mean, I agree with you, but it's nice to hear it.